Johnny Giuliano.
New platform. Welcome back, niggas. Well, welcome back, y'all. I know it's been so long. I can't say welcome back like that, like I ain't been gone for like a year and some change, but welcome back. Welcome back, y'all, to the $2 Podcast, where I, your host, go missing for several months, several years possibly, to live life, do some business stuff, and kind of come back and talk about the state of the world and some of the cool shit that I've been doing. So, no further ado, I'm your host, DJ, or Rashad, or whatever you came to know me as via doing this podcast. But y'all had to come back. There's a lot of shakeups in the world, a lot of shakeups with me that I just wanted to talk about. Just come back and discuss these cool, random things that have been just populating in our lives. Partially because of election, because of market changes, life changes, all kind of changes, y'all. So before we get into it, I got to give some life updates. So the first things first, got my MBA in the midst of my absence from the show. So it ain't like I ain't been working. I just been working on some other stuff besides the show. And it kind of took up a little bit of my time. And plus, I ain't gonna lie, I've been living a little bit of life too, y'all. But that's my major accomplishment. Got my MBA in the midst of my absence. So y'all can't say, oh, you just ain't been doing nothing. You left the entrepreneurs out. I ain't leave us, but I had to go do some stuff. Had to do some stuff to sharpen some skills, kind of prep myself for the next transition that I'm planning on making in life. I'm still in corporate America, still planning on staying in corporate America, but I want to venture out and do some additional things for me. So one of the major things I plan on accomplishing with the MBA is getting into teaching. Not grade school teaching, but like collegiate teaching. I always knew at some point in time I would be an instructor in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I always had a passion for it. Always wanted to do it. Always liked to do it. So finally got the necessary credentials so I can step into that collegiate space. I ain't got lofty aspirations, just maybe a community college, a small 4-year university, just teaching some business courses, giving some game to the next future great minds in the world of business, human resources, entrepreneurship, all that cool stuff. Also, got a little baby on the way. Yeah, gonna be a 3 times champ, 3 times pop, y'all. So got a kid on the way. Super excited about this future adventure into fatherhood. Look forward to that album dropping in April. Chicago. But yeah, man, a whole bunch of life stuff's been happening, but that ain't the purpose of me jumping back on and getting back out into these podcasting streets. There has been a lot that has changed since my last podcast from a political standpoint. And I know this isn't a political podcast, but sometimes there is some comorbidity between politics, being black, being in entrepreneurship, working world, business, all that cool stuff. There is some clashing of those worlds and some things that we kind of got to talk about and kind of got to address because it's going to affect your second dollar. So, had an election recently. The orange guy won. The orange guy won. I mean, what more can we say about it? The orange guy won. This isn't an indictment of Republicans. I don't care. I don't vote that way. I'm a left leaner. I've always been a super liberal guy. I'm more for the party that says we don't really care about what you do versus the party that wants to control everything that somebody does in their personal time, spare time, away from time. I just don't give a fuck. It's not my business. I don't care what you do. So I'm always going to be for the party that's for people doing what they want to do versus the party telling people what they can do. But this brought up an interesting conversation between myself and some of the homies about how do we get here? How do we get to a 2-time celebrity president? Like, how does that happen? And I think the first thing we got to do is blame Barack Obama. Gotta blame Barack Obama. Had black folks out here thinking we was getting equal rights with the whites in America, thinking the country was so in progress. I mean, he was the most qualified person for the job. He was the best candidate for the job, but he also just so happened to be black or somebody that white people in America identify as black. We're not getting into the whole culture wars conversation of who's black and who ain't and all this other cool shit. But the one thing I will say is that is what sparks having Donald Trump as president. Barack Obama winning. White folks did not like seeing a black elected official at this magnitude. And because this, you get the Tea Party movement, which is that extreme to the right Republican side of things. And you go through the Tea Party candidates whose main goal was to ensure that this type of situation never happens. So that's that extreme faction of the Republican Party. And then that kind of evolves into the Trump Republicans, who are even more extreme than the Tea Party. So we have this, but how do we elect this? By the Democrats not really giving the people an electable candidate. Not saying that Kamala Harris wasn't elected, or a person that we could elect. If you look at her resume on paper and compare it to the celebrity in chief, I mean, she's by far the best candidate. It's like I have an electrician job. There's this certified master electrician here, and there's a fucking barber on the other side. And America was like, we're going to fuck with that barber. They might be able to do something different, shake up the world of electricity. So yeah, this is how we get to this particular space, this particular time. But just being honest, we get to this space because the Democratic Party doesn't acknowledge the truth involving American politics and racism. Regardless of how liberal some of our counterparts claim to be, the fact that you put a well-qualified person in position to run against a person who doesn't have the qualifications, and the unqualified person gets the job, shows you that America is not in the social place that we thought it was. It's not. If you would have put a white person who was a guy in Kamala Harris's position running for the president of the United States, and they had half her credentials and they were running on the Democratic ticket against, Donald Trump, you win that election pretty easily. Hell, if Joe Biden would have came back, I'm pretty sure you would have had more people swing in that particular direction. America's not ready for a woman president. They've shown this time and time again with Hillary Clinton that they don't want that. With VP Harris, she's black and a woman. No, even though she's obviously the most qualified person for the position. But with that being said, elections have consequences. We are in the second month of Donald Trump's presidency, and it feels like we've been in this motherfucker for 6 years. 6 long years. It feels like we've been there for 6 long fucking years. But we haven't. We're just a month in. We got tariff wars, which are, I don't understand the purpose of this. If you're trying to say you're going to fix the economy, the first thing that you do is, start a trade war with our near and dear partners in Canada and Mexico, meaning we're going to see a direct hit when it comes to the cost of goods in the midst of fighting the trade war. I'm pretty sure if you would have ran this plan by the people that voted for you, it's like, all right, I'm going to raise prices even higher for an extended period of time in which I can't tell you when it's going to end, to potentially lower prices. So it could be in a couple months. It could be in a couple years. It could be whenever the next election happens. And if they put a Democrat in place and they get rid of these tariffs and the prices drop, then that's when the prices will drop. But I'm going to raise them bitches sky high first. And then the plan is to double back and get them to drop based off of somebody responding to our tariffs, in a way that does something positive for us. That's his plan. His plan is to get a reaction from someone else to fix our economy. That sounds like someone who would say some stuff like, I got a concept of a plan. So black folks, next 4 years, we in for an interesting time. We're in for an interesting time. So there's some things that we got to do. We got to save some money. I would typically say this is a great time to run to, my bad, y'all, getting text messages, man. Somebody asking me, you good? Yeah, I'm good. I don't know why I wouldn't be good. But yeah, this point in time, man, it's it's an interesting time, y'all. Very interesting time. So as black folks, save some money. I would say typically, invest heavily. But at this current point in time, you need to have some cash on hand. I'm talking maybe 2 months of salary is something that you need to have saved up, because one unintended consequence of tariff wars is the raising cost. First, you got the rising price of stuff, right? On top of that, there's job loss that comes with rising costs. So there can be an unexpected layoff, unexpected change in your work circumstances or work situations. So that's something that you have to prepare for. So whether it be you don't have a side hustle now, you need to consider getting one just to build up a nest egg. The second thing is, I would say if you got a solid savings, keep putting money toward it now. Like a lot of people will get to a particular number, stop, and then focus on their investment portfolio. I would say try to bolster that up a bit more during this time period because, again, we're about to get in shaky ground. I'm talking shaky ground to the point of like the economy is going to look something similar to what we saw, possibly, not saying I'm an economist, but it could look like something like we saw during the Great Depression simply because tariffs were a heavy focus then, and that shit wrecked the economy. So you want to be able to have the cash on hand to make the purchases or pay the bills just in case some changes of these unintended changes that are coming because of a dumbass tariff war affects your business. Second thing is kind of lean into that second job, lean into that second hobby that can get you your extra paper that doesn't necessarily require you putting in a ton of work. There's a lot of us. I mean, a lot of the audience that listens to me is college educated, people who have multiple trades, different businesses and things of that nature. If you're considering venturing into something that doesn't require a lot of capital and a lot of your time, i.e. my master's degree folks look into part-time teaching, online teaching, something like that, that can get you extra money while you do your regular job, consulting work, getting to starting your own consulting firm, business analyst, doing something that doesn't necessarily take up too much of your time from your primary source of income that gives you an additional source of income. That needs to be the primary focus. Bolster that nest egg. Get back into investing, but only focus on ETFs. Don't focus on like individual stocks. And then focusing in on that second hustle. Finding something that doesn't take up too much of your time, but something that can help you get to your extra paper. So that being said, y'all, DE&I. Again, there's a lot of shit that has happened since the last time I dropped an episode. A lot of shit, right? But one thing that's kind of been tossed around since 2020, George Floyd, a lot of businesses have kind of jumped onto this wave. A lot of people have kind of just got into this conversation. It's been the conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Prior to the Trump administration, diversity, equity, and inclusion was about pretty much giving visibility to people who just weren't white males into different roles and positions at their jobs. It could be something involving accessibility for a building for someone who's disabled that can actually, contribute to the business, but they couldn't get inside of the business because ain't no goddamn wheelchair ramp. It could be identifying other candidates who are well qualified for the job, but because of politics and racial politics that come into play into the workplace, they're not necessarily getting the opportunities to get the looks. It's not saying they're getting the looks because of those extra things that they have going on for them, whether it be religion, race, sexual orientation, whatever. It's the fact that they are talented enough to do the jobs and probably have more credentials or more experience than the white men who are currently in those positions or that are applying for those roles. It was simply about visibility to actually getting the most qualified candidates, the interviews at least. I think of the NFL and the goddamn Rooney Rule. Like, yes, you have to be super qualified for one to be in the NFL as an assistant to even get an interview, right? But a lot of times we weren't getting the looks. Thusly, the NFL implemented the Rooney Rule. But as the Trump administration's kind of laying it out, DE&I just means black. It's another racist dog whistle for black. It's just like Black Lives Matter. They flipped that into saying all lives matter. We don't care about you niggas. Into woke. Woke somehow got into white vernacular and they hijacked and changed the meaning of that too. And now they're changing the meaning of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So much to where we recently had a major tragedy with a plane crash, major tragedy in which a lot of people lost their lives in a flight coming from, I believe it was Wichita, Kansas into DC. And there was a Black Hawk chopper that ran into the plane and a lot of people lost their lives. There were no people that survived that accident. And instead of, trying to get down to the bottom of the issue and seeing what really happened or what instructions were not followed or what the newest administration in the office said, this was DE&I. It was the blacks somehow hiring short people and blacks and people with disabilities caused this accident. And then you start to see And I'm not saying this is these people's fault. I'm not trying to politicize what happened to them by any means or anything like that. But then you start to see who was involved in the actual crash. Like, for example, the plane pilots were both Caucasian males. The helicopter pilot was a Caucasian female. You look into statistics because they didn't release the information about the air traffic controller, but the FAA's air traffic controllers are about 98% white. So where does DE&I come into play in that situation? And who's going to hold the current administration responsible for just throwing out these outlandish statements? Like, who's going to hold you? You know what I mean? So be prepared for that as well. DE&I is going away in a lot of public sector work, right? So you're starting to see the demonization of it, and it's going to kind of bleed into the world of the uneducated. And black folks, it's not our job to educate people on it, but it does affect us. So it kind of puts us at this crossroad of we shouldn't have to explain this to you. But on the other side of it is if we don't explain anything to anybody, there's going to be misconceptions that kind of just run rampant. And then we eventually become the people that lose the most in these situations. So we got to dispel the whole DE&I thing. So that's one thing that I think is going to be a wild journey. And we're starting to see some companies already make some pivots and saying, oh, we fulfilled our DE&I requirements, like Target. Target crushed my spirit, man. I fucking love Target. Love shopping there. But it makes you second guess wanting to go there because as a corporation, you understand from a DE&I standpoint how you benefit from it financially. Companies who focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion in their recruitment and in their marketing strategies typically see 12% more revenue than companies that don't. So it's profitable to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But you go against better business decisions to kind of grandstand for politics. So we're going to be in for an interesting 4 years. I just want to check in on y'all, make sure y'all good, show y'all I'm still alive. I'm making some progress and progress you guys can make too in the midst of all of this, but we're going to keep thriving. We're going to keep on surviving. Second Dollar Podcast, y'all. I'm going to be dropping, not as so sporadic, man. I'm finished with school. I want to get back into the podcasting space. This is a fun space for me, especially talking about these particular topics. Might have some guests on to kind of talk about the things that they're doing or things that they plan on doing within the next 4 years to kind of continue to elevate themselves in this crazy, wild time, y'all. But I'm here dropping that advice. Gonna be on here regular, new platform and whatnot. So looking forward to continue rocking out with y'all. Peace.
Johnny Giuliano.